Welcome to the Future is Fun podcast with your hosts, Brian Olds and Danielle Tucker. Buckle up as we explore the latest emerging technologies, business trends, and fascinating discoveries that are shaping our world today. Are you ready? Let's dive in and see what the future has in store.
All right. So I want to go ahead and officially welcome you. This is episode 1 of the Future is Fun podcast. Brian Olds here, and I'm joined with my amazing co-host, Danielle Tucker in the building. What's going on?
Yay! Podcast episode 1. This is so exciting. I feel like we've been steadily talking and working towards this moment for quite some time, and it feels good that it's finally happening.
Yeah, me too. It's kind of cool. I'm so excited to be doing this with you, Danielle. I think when I originally thought about doing another podcast iteration, I was like, man, talking to myself for 30 minutes, it just feels weird, even though I know there are like lots of people listening to this. And so I'm really excited to do this with you specifically because I feel like we share like a lot of the same sensibilities, but we also have different perspectives. So that'll bring a lot of excitement to what we're doing. But the future is fun. So this episode 1, we're going to be talking all about why we started this journey, why we did this. And I'm sure there are a lot of people out there listening that are thinking about starting a podcast or probably have your own. And if you do, let us know. But the thing is, everything has to start somewhere. So we just really, as we go on this journey, wanted to let you know why we dove into it. So I guess we could start with some brief introductions and then we can kind of get into it. Does that sound good to you, Danielle?
Yeah, sounds good. I think that's the best place to start.
Cool. Well, I'll go first then. Brian Olds. I am a founder of Black Speakers Network, or the founder of Black Speakers Network, I guess. BSN is a company I started in 2016. Our mission is to equip, connect, and inspire the next generation of Black professional speakers. And I started that company with the goal to create more diversity in the professional speaking world. And so we provide speaker training, resources, and also access to speaking opportunities. And it was through BSN that I met Danielle, and and so I throw it to you, Danielle, to talk about your journey a little bit.
Yeah, so hello everyone who is listening. My name is Danielle Tucker, and I'm the founder of my company, which is Professional Speaker Websites. And what I do is I work with myself and my team, and we strategically design luxury brands and websites for thought leading entrepreneurs and speakers who are looking to really elevate their online presence and stand out within the speaking industry. So I believe, Brian, we met back in 2018. It's kind of funny. I started sharing this story recently. Brian and I actually met in person for the first time a few weeks ago, or I guess it was about a week ago or so from the
Yep.
time of recording this. But I started off, well, I think it all started back in 2018. And he was like, oh, okay,
I've
I'm
never heard
interested.
this story. I'm listening.
Yes. So, but yeah, we connected initially back in 2018, and my entrepreneur journey began, I would say, in 2015, where my husband and I sold everything we had, got married, booked one-way tickets to South Africa, and pursued a life of digital nomad, location independence. And that was a very interesting experience within my life. And it was also a really pinnacle point that has led me to where we are today with meeting Brian, serving my clients online, and then also recording all of the experiences and learnings and things that I have discovered along the way on our The Future is Fun podcast. So I'm sure I'll dive deeper into a lot of those experiences that I've had as we go along with our podcast conversations, but that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, no, I think that's an incredible intro. Yeah, I was sitting at that table and down in Huntsville, and I was just like, "Oh wow, this is great." I I learned so much about you and Devarius on that trip, and I'm looking forward to continuing to get to know, because a lot of those stories I hadn't heard. I was like, how old are you again? How you had all these adventures around the world, and they'd be like, well, when I was in South Africa, we were doing this. I was like, what was I doing that year? I feel like I was just at work all day,
Back in my day.
Yeah. I'm like, aren't you like 10 years younger than me? That's amazing. Um, but yeah, so awesome stuff. And same here. I'm sure folks will learn more about us throughout the course of the podcast. Of course, our goal, I think, for this is to have fun while we're talking about the future, which is in the name. But I think ultimately this is going to be a really good journey. So I guess diving in, I guess the fun way we figured out how to do this is that I've come up with 5 reasons for starting a podcast. Danielle, you have 5 reasons for why you wanted to do the podcast. And so we're going to alternate back and forth and ultimately leave you all with 10 reasons why we wanted to start a podcast. So this should be kind of a mini episode, I think, but a good intro for new listeners or folks may have discovered us somewhere along the way. And then maybe we could check back in on episode like 50 or 100 or some place in the future and see how we're doing with these things. So we can go ahead and jump into it. So I guess the first reason that I wanted to start the Future is Fun podcast is I'm a nerd. And Danielle, I think you know this. I went to school. My original goal was to be an engineer, aerospace engineer. And I was telling you and your husband this story when we visited Huntsville. And one of the biggest reasons I wanted to come down and hang out with you guys in Huntsville is that it's home to NASA. There are NASA facilities all across the country, but you all have the U.S. Space and Rocket Center there, and it's also home of the Space Camp. And as a kid, I wanted to be an engineer and an astronaut. I had no idea what it would take to get to either of those. Had no idea there was so much math involved. Hence today why, I'm not an engineer or an astronaut probably, but I think I'll be an astronaut at some point. But basically,
I
I'm a
think so
nerd.
too.
Thank you. Well, it's getting easier and easier. We definitely going to talk about the future of space at some point. But, I'm a nerd. I love learning multiple topics. And actually, Danielle, and I started thinking about this, and one of the things I realized is that in school, some people get kind of stressed out having to, particularly like high school and middle school, and I guess even elementary school, throughout the day you're learning like multiple topics. So you might go from
Mhm.
like science to chemistry to English, and you're learning all these topics in one day. And I used to really like that. I used to like having to be able to learn about so many different things all at once versus when you get into college, you start to kind of specialize. And I know that's practical, but it's something I really never enjoyed. Like I always loved being able to discover new topics at one time. So even if I'm late at night scrolling on YouTube, I might watch something about building bridges. Like, a couple days ago, I was watching this video on airport codes, like why all the airports and stuff have different codes. So I'm just a nerd. I love learning. And so that's my number one reason for wanting to start the podcast. And I believe one of the best ways to learn is to talk about it and teach it to somebody else. And so that's a big reason. So Danielle, what's one of your reasons for starting?
Yes, I would say for number two, I would say essentially the name, The Future is Fun. And from my experience, I would say thinking about the future can feel kind of daunting sometimes. And I always love to maintain a headspace of positivity, looking for the silver lining, looking at what the possibility is within people, within opportunities, within experiences. And thinking about my story, I've definitely seen a lot of interesting things. My husband and I, we traveled. My husband, his name's Savarius. We have traveled to a number of different types of countries. We've been from third world, second world, first world, obviously here in the United States. And so, seeing a lot of the things that we've seen, uh, you can choose to be sad about it, or you can choose to let the experiences enrich you in order to create more positive experiences for the future. And so I would say my reason for why I'm really excited for our podcast is to give people hope for the future, to give people something to look forward to, and to serve as a motivator to get excited about the possibility that's ahead and to not look at the future as something to be scared of. So that would be my number two reason.
That's beautiful. I love that. Y'all have such
Popcorn
a
back
great
to you.
Y'all have such a great relationship too. I'm glad that again I learned a lot just watching y'all and seeing that dynamic. But yeah, being able to look out into the future, I think is a positive thing. So my number two is entrepreneurship. Yeah, I mentioned I've been an entrepreneur since 2016. I've been a full time entrepreneur since 2019, and so one of the biggest, I think, downfalls for most companies is not actually having situational awareness around what's happening in the marketplace. And so that could be consumer trends, that could be technology. And so I always want to keep a pulse on what's happening versus having blinders on. And I think you need to have blinders to some extent. You kind of can't get too seduced by what your competitors are doing or, go chasing every, rabbit down the rabbit hole. But I do think that being able to get into some of the topics that we're going to be talking about on this podcast, whether it's AI, healthcare, just paying attention to what's happening in the world around us is extremely valuable, both as people, just ordinary citizens, and as well as, but especially as an entrepreneur, you always want to be like a couple steps ahead. So that's one of the reasons why, oh, that's my second reason why I think this podcast is going to be great.
Yes, I love it. I guess I technically gave my first reason, and this would be my second reason. So, my second reason would be for starting this podcast is to serve as a outlet for creative expression. So, Brian, you and I have some really fun conversations, and I know there have
Definitely.
been many, many times where we're like, "Darn, why didn't we record this?"
Facts.
And
Facts.
so I think, being able to have space where we can just have fun while we talk about really nerdy topics and also get really excited about it and share it, share our perspectives and also give everyone listening a chance to kind of see into our world and into our minds, I think is a really fun and creative thing to do. And so that's something I'm really excited about that, I'm very much so looking forward to experiencing. And I would say that's probably my number two reason for doing the podcast.
Yeah, so we've had so many of those conversations where it was like, oh man, I wish we could get it out. And then I love the word you use or the phrase creative expression, because I've always considered myself more of a like left brain person versus like right brain creative. But then I do think in certain domains, it's like, oh, when there's no pressure, we kind of allow ourselves to have these thought experiments, and there's nobody to tell us no. We can just like, oh, what about this, or what's happening? And so and I think some of the best conversations are those that feel like you are essentially a fly on the wall, or you're listening in at a restaurant and the whoever's in the booth behind you is having like a really great conversation. You're just ear
Those are the
hustling.
best conversations. It's like, shh, shh, they're talking about something. Let's listen.
I, right. You're not supposed to be there, but you kind of are. So, it's all good. My third reason is investing. And so I've made it public that one of my future goals is to be a angel investor. I think investing sits at the intersection of, or at least, looking at companies that sit at the intersection of business and technology are really interesting to me. I think that this experience of being an entrepreneur and growing a company like Black Speakers Network has really lit a fire for that process. But more importantly, when I do think about the future, I think most of the future is being shaped by startups, by companies, specifically founders who see a need or a void, or look at the world and say, hey, this thing could be better. Why are people dying from these diseases? Why are people, spending time on this, thing that's a headache, whatever challenge it is, and just creating solutions around that. And I think that's something great to participate in. And as an angel investor, you don't need to be a technologist. You don't need to necessarily, need to know how to code or any of those things. You just have to have money or skill. If you come in as a consultant or an advisor, I guess. But basically, it gives you the ability to throw your weight behind ideas and people that you ultimately believe in, and that's really all I want to do. At this phase of my life, as I look at like the next 50 or 60 years, some people have massive real estate portfolios. Some people do really great in stock market and crypto. Some people buy artwork, and I probably do some of those things too. But I think being an investor in people is the one of the highest returns, and startups that are shaping the world. And so I think by getting into a lot of these topics and really the research behind it, and just diving into these different trends that are happening, will provide insight into some of those future investment opportunities. So if we have any founders or VCs or other angels that are in the community, I would love to connect and make sure that we go on this journey together.
Yes, I second your third, fourth reason, whichever one that was.
Three,
Yes,
baby.
third. Okay. So I would say my next reason would be to add a refreshing spin to business that doesn't feel so stuffy. And when I think about my journey with entrepreneurship, starting in 2015, what is that, like 7 years, going on 8 years? Wow. Uh, I feel like a big part of the resilience muscle, I would say for me, is having experiences that feel fun in business. Because if it's not fun, if it's not something that lights you up, or even just the trial and error part of the journey, if that's not something that feels exciting, even if there's parts of the journey that just don't feel good, like why else are you doing it? And so part of that for me, I would say, in regards to this podcast, is creating an avenue of uh, inviting, you, inviting me, and everyone who's listening to be open to doing things in a not so stuffy way, and having some enjoyment around how we're having conversations. Because I'm sure along the journey we're going to talk about some really intriguing topics that could ruffle a few feathers potentially. But I think also, with having interesting conversations about what the future looks like, and what we could expect, I think there's also opportunity to kind of see the good in it too. So uh, that's what I would say, is just making it to where we have like a refreshing spin on business, and creating more opportunities for that to happen.
I love that. The joy factor I think is really important. It's one of the reasons why I became an entrepreneur, was that I didn't want to fit into the box or the mold of everything else. And sometimes some of that stuff is, stuffy. It's just like not it's like, okay, let's add some personality to these proceedings. Let's add some fun. Let's add some um dynamics. And so I really, really enjoy that. My fourth reason is I really love talking to really smart people. And I get flack for this sometimes because I'm a Leo, and Leos, I guess, have a bad reputation for having like high ego. But I think that's a trait that I maybe we could talk about ego another time, but basically, I consider myself a pretty low ego person. Like, I don't need to have the most attention. Like, I don't need to be the smartest person in the room. Most of the time, I don't want to be. I want to be learning from others, and even when I go places to speak, I'm talking to the audience. I'm talking to meeting planners. I'm talking to, the staff. I'm really trying to distill wisdom from other people. But specifically, with the Future is Fun, I think that we're going to have some opportunities to bring in guests, and I definitely include you in this, Danielle, because you, like, when I hear you talking about like web design or brand building or some of these other like really niche topics, I'm just like, you are like brilliant. And so I love talking to really smart people. Of course, getting into like cutting edge technology and research is also amazing. But I do think this will become a platform where we can uh, expand our network, and by extension, expand the network to you, everyone listening, and put some folks that you may not have organically connected with or run across on your radar. And these are the people that are ultimately changing. Um, Changing small parts of the world. And so I really, really love learning from smart people and look forward to doing that here.
You know, you being a Leo is probably why we get along so well.
Is it?
Okay, everyone listening, I'm a Sagittarius, so I don't know.
And I
Those
don't
two
know
are
what any
pretty.
of them mean.
Yeah, those two are pretty complementary. You're definitely are very. You can definitely liven up a room too. I don't know why Leos get such a bad rap though.
I always felt like people, well, I think there are some that are just kind of like arrogant,
Yeah.
which is fine. Yeah, I think as a leader, you need to have a little bit. I think you need to have I think you need to have a healthy ego in general to do anything in life that takes like a certain amount of audacity. But I don't know. I think, especially from like a dating perspective, when I normally, if I'm talking to somebody, I'm like, oh, I'm a Leo. There's all this like, I get lumped in this category with all the other bad experiences that people have had with Leos. And I'm just like, okay, well,
Or like those Facebook threads where they're like, "What's the sign you hate the most? What's the most toxic sign?"
I feel like Geminis get the worst. I feel like no, but like Geminis are the ones that always
Yeah,
get talked
I
about.
usually see those on there too. But yeah, that's really funny. So I would say my next reason for the podcast is to to educate and inspire others with the information that I do know. Uh, being traveling for the number of years that I did and learning how to build a business completely 100% online without doing like any in-person networking or anything like that, just like really solely uh, going full force into 100% building an online business, I think has given me a really unique perspective in terms of like tech, in terms of tools, systems, user experience, and just business in general. And so, any way that I can help to be a resource to anyone who may be listening or anyone who I might see on a day to day basis, whenever it comes to using technology in a really intentional way, is something that I really enjoy and really appreciate doing. So, I would say that's probably my next reason for why I'm excited for the Future is Fun podcast.
Yeah, that's really great because I know a lot of people. I'm sure you have the experience of people, slide into your DMs or people wanting to pick your brain and all these different things. And of course, that's kind of cool. Like the first couple, like first year or two of entrepreneurship, and then after a while, it's kind of like, you can pick my brain, but I'm gonna send you an invoice.
Yes.
So like you can't do that at scale, and so you gotta have a way to speak to the masses, and but now you could be like, well, you could send somebody a little message and then be like, hey, listen to episode 48, and we break this down pretty well, and then you can go on about your business. So I think
Exactly.
that's good.
It's
So this is my
efficient. It's a time saver.
yeah, and I'm all about that for real. The time is I'm actually about to post about that in a little bit. Time is time. I think we typically underestimate how big of an asset time is and how big of an asset health is. Like those two things. And there are some people that you may not have a lot of money, right now, and you may not have a lot of other types of assets like homes and, treasury bonds or whatever else. But, if you're young, in your 20s, 30s, 40s, even 50s is still young. 60s maybe, depending on your health. And if you're healthy, those are two of the biggest assets that you have. And depending on how you deploy them, they could make all the difference. So that's a whole nother topic. But my last one is uh I I really, and this is going into the part about the future. Um I believe that the future is really the only thing that we have agency over. And so there's this really great quote. Danielle, have you heard of this guy named Bill Keane? I think his last name is Keane, like
Mm-mm. I
Keane.
don't. Yeah, I don't think I've heard of him.
So Bill Keane, he's a cartoonist. So with our joint love of cartoons and anime, you'll probably appreciate this. Have you heard of the comic strip Family Circus?
I've probably seen it,
Yeah, you
but
definitely
yeah.
have. Okay. So he created the comic strip Family Circus. And so he has this quote, and the quote is, you probably heard this. It's yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, today is a gift. I think it's today is a gift of God, which is why we call it the present. And
Mm.
and that's how I feel. Like, every day, like yesterday's history is gone. Can't do anything about it. We can read about it. We can talk about it. And I think a lot of social media is that, like, we're constantly digesting and talking about what has happened. And that's, fine. And there needs to be an appreciation of history, because, if we don't understand it, it could, bad things could continue to happen. Um, Today is a gift. And so current is a gift, and it is, the fact that we're here talking to each other, and we can create experiences, but there's no such thing as the present. Like, the present is always fleeting, so that really can't do anything about that. The only thing you can control is the future. And so, but it's a mystery. We don't know exactly what's going to happen. But I do believe that if we can have insight, if we can distill a sense of, if we can keep a sense of curiosity, if we can keep a sense of openness to what has happened and what is happening, we can begin to position ourselves again as leaders, as entrepreneurs, as professionals, as parents, as, pick a title. We could keep a pulse on these things, then we could position ourselves to do better in the future. And the future is basically where all the action is. Like, that's what's happening. And I know, um, listening to or probably when you hear the title, "The Future is Fun," it may sound like overly naive, like, oh, not everything is fun about the future. And I get that. Like, there's, in the future, there's going to be wars, there's going to be, a lot of different things that are absolutely not fun. However, if we can, I think collectively, the first step in creating a future that is actually desirable slash fun is to envision it. And so, if we have more people out there that are purposely working to create a future that is one you really want to live in, then we can actually get there. So that's my thing. Like, I really think the future is going to be an amazing place, whether it's, you know 2 weeks from now or 200 years in the future. And so that's why I think focusing on the fun aspect of it is a good thing to do.
Yes, I love that so much. I almost want to just tie a bow on it and just let that be it.
We could do 9.
um, yes, I do have one more point that I want to share in terms of like one of my reasons, and I would say to add to what you shared with creating a better future. First of all, I really love how you like broke that down from like the past, the present, and the future, and it's so interesting just to like think about the present. Like it literally is fleeting. Like the present is now already in the past at this point. So so interesting to think about. But I would say one more reason for me for doing the podcast is to continue constructive dialogue about things that we truly care about. And like you said, like in order to create a future that we are excited about and proud of, what better way to do that than to facilitate conversations that are actually going to lead to the change and the future that we really want to see and that we feel is, most in alignment with what we want to experience. And so, uh, I think with the podcast and with these conversations, it's a really unique way to create a platform or create an opportunity to have conversations and to get people thinking and to touch on different things that maybe could spark someone else to create a solution. So that's another reason why I'm very excited for the Future is Fun podcast.
Well said. Now that was a bow. That's the Gandhi, be the change you want to see
Oh,
in the
yeah, it
future.
is, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm always good for a quote, Danielle, so don't worry.
Yes.
Well, there we go. That's episode 1. I think that's pretty much what we want to do. As we said, you'll get an opportunity to know both of us over the course of our journey together. But the future is indeed fun, and so looking forward to just diving into some of these topics. I think the next episode you'll find is really intriguing, but we have a long list of topics like a growing list of topics, and there's no shortage here. So but if you have recommendations, if you have things that you want us to talk about, drop it in the comments on whatever platform you're listening to. Danielle and I will be taking a look at those and adding them in, and we're looking forward to going down the line. So any final thoughts, Danielle, as we wrap up this episode?
I'm excited for the journey. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, we should probably come up with like a sign off
We
phrase or
need,
like a
I was going to say,
slogan
we
or
need a
something.
catchphrase.
Yeah, if there are any or maybe we could use the AI too to figure out some catchphrases. But
Yes.
if y'all have an idea for like a great sign off phrase, that might be good too.
And it
Uh,
needs to be done in like an epic voice too. Like
in a
that deep.
world,
You know what I'm
yeah.
talking about?
If anybody knows Idris Elba, if he's
Yes.
available to help us, I heard James Earl Jones also just retired, so maybe he's free for some. Is he on Fiverr? Maybe we could get him for like a couple $100s. All right, guys, we're out. Future is Fun, episode 1 in the books. We'll see you next time in the future.
Bye. Bye.